Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rethink Real Estate. We're going through follow-up. What does it look like? And what should it look like? Because it's a little more intense than what you might think. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Rethink Real Estate, folks. Today, what I'm going to walk you through is the follow-up sequence that we go through with people as we're approaching auction. The reason I'm bringing that up is because what I'm finding at the moment is that agents and buyers are definitely not communicating as much as probably what they should. And at the end of the day, as listing agents in our follow-up process to really provide the appropriate answers, what are the steps and how often are we having to follow up to provide answers for the agents that have partnered with us to go through auction? Now, today, the point of this is to show you the volume of follow-up that we go through in order to get some of the answers. And you would be shocked at the volume of people that we have to follow up in excess of probably 5 or 6 times to provide some level of answer, but also still not hearing back either. One of our primary points of difference with the auction process is the level of follow-up that our team does. So when you do a non-distressed auction, is that obviously you're the listing agent if you are a realtor and it is your listing. However, you have Heidi, who is our auction administrator, one of our auction associates, either Matt or Chase, and then also Callista, who is the operations manager. You're working directly with me as well. But one of the primary things that we do throughout the lead up to the auction date is making sure that the realtor themselves, the listing agent, their core responsibility is to collect as much data from buyers and agents that are reaching out to them as possible. So that is the first step. I just want to be clear about this. You can't follow up people that ultimately you don't have their information for. And there's definitely one of the things that I do want to mention when it comes to follow up is that I'm speaking to a few different agents is that they say, well, I'm not going to follow up with people. If they don't follow up with me, then ultimately they're not interested in the property. I vigorously disagree with that. I can see the logic behind it, but this is coming from just what we're doing. Sometimes people need to be convinced of the opportunity in order to actually then want the property further. Now, you might think that if you have to convince a buyer or convince an agent that this is the right opportunity, then you'd have no leverage in that negotiation. That is absolutely not the case whatsoever, because once they have committed to that property and once they have made that decision, you can turn it into reverse. It's often the contradiction that most agents don't understand. Most of the time you need to encourage people to be involved in an auction, then you get them into a situation where they're in a bidding war and they'll continue forward. That is where I believe that you can create buyers versus the right buyer. Let's be honest. If there was the right buyer for the property right now, it would have sold as a traditional listing at that current price. So let's have a conversation about what are some of the things that we're saying, but also what is the sequence of follow-up that we go through when someone hits auction. Now, I'm only showing you what auction is so that maybe you can create your own element of follow-up within traditional real estate as well in your own sequence. But thinking to yourself, what is your sequence of follow-up? A buyer comes through the door at an open house. An agent comes through the door at an open house, okay? Or an agent or a buyer calls you about the property. They set up a showing. They go through the property. Whatever it looks like, what is your follow-up process? Too often people are relying on the MLS feedback or whatever it is, or they will call me if they're interested. It's just bullshit. It's just laziness, okay? Give you an understanding of what we do. When we get given a name, somebody reaches out to us because sometimes they reach out to us directly because our details are in the MLS along with the agent, depending on where we are in the country. The agent provides us with a name and number or a phone number or whatever it is. The first thing that we do, first and foremost, is that we actually Google the number. We Google the number because there's so much information that is out there online that we're likely to find an email address as well and make that a complete entry to the inquiry list that we use. We have an individual app within our company, but also within Harcourts Auctions that we use that fuels all of our back end, that runs all of our follow-up and carries all of our list. So there's another question. Where are you putting the people's information? Okay, where are you gathering that? Simply having it in an email or simply having it in your phone, in your text messages is just, again, laziness. Okay, if it's all in the one spot, you can go through that list and add that follow-up. So again, we find a name, we get a phone number. Okay, even if we don't even get the name sometimes, the phone number will be able to give us further information if we do Google that. Obviously, if it's a realtor, then their information is going to be all online. Sometimes it's more of a little bit difficult to find just general public people's information. But either way, once we have a phone number, that gives us an opportunity to try and complete that. But then it's our responsibility as well and to coach the agents. And if we're getting calls as well, find out name, find out phone number, ask for an email address as well. And we also ask, are they local to in the marketplace of that property? Getting that further information is really important. Now, once we have that entered into our list of people, okay, if we just have a phone number, they receive a text message saying, thank you for your interest in 123 Smith Street. Here is a link to the auction website. So you could do the same thing when it comes to just the property website, on the Harcourts websites, on your own individual property websites, on any website, okay, that you might have the property advertised. You might even do it on Zillow so they save it, so that therefore that they ultimately, if you send them the link, it immediately saves it for them, so that therefore when there is a price change or something happens to that property, they get notified of that as well. Okay. Now, once we've got that phone number, if we do have an email address as well, they will get an email immediately as well saying, thank you so much for your interest in 123 Smith Street. Here is all of the information about auction. There is a link to the auction page. You can download the reports and disclosures, so on and so forth. That is the first step in all of it. Text message and an email, if ultimately we have both forms of communication. Now, if we have one or the other, they get the email or they just get the text message. Okay. Now, there is an immediate email that follows up 24 hours after they're logged into the system to say, hey, it's been 24 hours since we've communicated. You may have a few questions. Here is a quick video on our auction process. Okay. So you might even be able to set something up. Somebody showed me the other day. Okay. And this is a full hack. Okay. If you go into your text messages and you have an iPhone, off to the little plus button to the side, you can schedule a text message to go out at a particular date and time. I'm not sure how long you can do it in ahead, but the reality is that let's say that you communicated with that person, here is a text message, blah, 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 okay, with the link to the property, and 24 hours, hey, I just wanted to follow up to see if you had any questions about the above, right? And again, you're asking, well, why am I following these people up if they're not interested? If they haven't told you they're not interested, they may still be interested, okay? If they do tell you they're not interested, gives you an opportunity to be like, well, what else can I help you with? Okay, even if they already have an agent, again, guys, your job is to build relationships with people for the future. The likelihood, maybe they buy a home with that other agent, but the reality is that further down the path, you could become their agent if you stay in communication with them and sell that property that agent sold to them. Okay. So then what happens is that then we do a midway follow-up, okay, is within a week's time to just circle back and say, do you have any interest in that specific property? Okay. Now, agent or buyer, this happens the same. Now, at that point, we do a voicemail drop, and also, okay, we will send them a follow-up text message as well. Now, at that point, they might say they're no further interest or whatever it is. We will then ask why, and then we will encourage them to be like, hey, this could be one of the best buys in the marketplace this year. Are you sure you want to miss that opportunity? Now, we have out of the people that respond to that, we have about a 50% conversion ratio to getting them back for a second showing, or getting them to actually maybe put an offer in or reconsider the property at a particular price point. This is the part that I'm telling you. You can convince people that the opportunity is right for them. And once they sink their teeth into it, they don't want to let go. Okay. Now, the sequence from there is very important, is that then there is different triggers. If we do get an offer prior to auction, then we will communicate with everybody, text message and email and a voicemail drop. And also, if we can't get a hold of people, we will make phone calls as a follow-up as well. If there is an offer prior to auction, we will circulate that through everybody, just so that people know. It's interesting. Our average is about 80% of the time, if we do get an offer prior to auction and we circulate it through all of the people that we've been able to gather, is that we will get another, even if it's a lower number that then convinces the seller to take the first offer or whatever it is. You are doing your client an absolute injustice if you cannot do that. Okay, there could be money left on the table. There could be leveraged opportunities left on the table. Now, let me take you through the sequence that happens as we lead into auction day. If we haven't sold it prior to auction, 10 days before the auction. So the Tuesday before auction week. All of our auctions happen at 12 o'clock Pacific on a Thursday. Okay, so the Tuesday before that Thursday, the Tuesday the week before that Thursday, okay, so 10 days before the auction, we announce the bidding registration deadline. The bidding registration deadline is on auction week, okay? So the Tuesday of auction week, okay, is at 5 p.m. is when we have our first deadline. Now, that is not a hard deadline. It is just simply a deadline that gives us a very clear indication that if a bidder and agent are not aware of the bidding deadline because they haven't read any of the material or looked at the MLS or gone into any detail online and downloaded the disclosures, they're probably not as serious as we need them to be to pay a really good emotional price. So it gives us really good insight. Then after that 10-day communication goes out, that is a phone call, email, and also a text message, or excuse me, I should go back in reverse. There's a text message, email, If we don't get a response, then it is a phone call as well that same day. And then there is a voicemail drop that is dropped into their voicemail if ultimately we do not hear back from them. Okay. Then the Thursday before the auction, so a week from auction, okay, we will make the announcement that you are a week from auction. You are not registered to bid. Now is the appropriate time. We need financial and identity verification. Then once we get to auction week on the Monday, a big email goes out. Hey, you are not registered for auction. You could miss out on one of the best buys this year. Okay. Now that is just an email. Then Tuesday morning phone calls are made in order to go through and make sure that we can get the answers. Okay. That afternoon, okay, we then let people know that they've missed the deadline. We can extend it and give them an opportunity to bid by 5 p.m. tomorrow and get that registration. And then on Wednesday, we communicate with them to let them know that we've extended the deadline. Now, at that point, do you think that we have a very clear-cut understanding of who's interested and who's not? Absolutely, we do. Okay. The volume of times that we've had to do that, though, is to get people to say no at least, because we need to provide our sellers answers. With auction, if you say to a seller, we had 50 groups of people and we have 40 of them that haven't communicated with us or haven't said anything to us, they still have this residence of hope of that somebody will turn up and place a bid that then gives them exactly what they want. We need to provide them answers, even if it's not the answers that they are looking for. So folks, what is your follow-up strategy? What is your data collection strategy? Where do you put it? Okay. So that then you can continue to circle back. I'm not saying that it needs to be to the extent of what we need it to be for auction because we're drawing to a deadline. Okay. But in a traditional sense, definitely needs to be some format of at least 4 or 5 communication points. Okay. Great opportunity. This is the reasons why. Okay. Take the advantages of text messages and individual subtle messages to get people to rethink, because whilst they said no once, they might go looking at other properties and find out what they want isn't out there, and they might need to circle back again. And you're leaving money on the table if you're not following up correctly, because not only are you leaving money on the table for your clients, you are leaving money on the table for you for future business with relationship building. Hopefully that helps. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.